Hey, let's go over our PDN, shall we? When we multiply 175 times 32, we're first going to start and multiply 175 times two ones. So I'm going to go 2 times 5, 5, 10. Put a 0 here and I regroup my 10 ones into 110. Now I draw an arrow for two ones times 7 tens. I roll my 2's 7 times 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Plus one more is 15. I keep my 5 in the ones place and I regroup. 10 tens to 100. 2 times 100 is 200, plus one more 100 is 300. And now I put an X in my ones place since I'm done with my ones. I erase any of my regrouping. Ew, I need a better eraser. I erase any of my regrouping. Much better. And now I start multiplying in my tens place. 3 tens times 5 ones, 5, 10, 15. I put a 5 right here and I regroup. 3 times 7, I can roll my 3, 7 times 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. That's 21, plus one more is 22. Put a 2 down here and I regroup my 2 tens, or 20 tens, into 200s. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 more is 5. Put the 5 right here. And now I add up my two multiplication problems underneath to find my product. 0 ones plus 0 ones is 0 ones. 5 tens plus 5 tens is 10 tens. But I put a 0 here and I regroup 100 up top. 200 plus 300 is 500. Plus one more 100 is 600. And then I have 5,000 right here. My product is 5,600 for number 1. For number 2, I'm going to do 5 ones times 68 and then 110 times 68. Similarly, 5 times 8 is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So I put a 0 right here and I regroup my 40 ones into 4 tens. 6 times 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Plus 4 is 34. 4 here, and I regroup my 300s. There's nothing more to multiply, so I just drop down my 3. And now I will use my other eraser with the good eraser and put an X in my ones place since I'm done with my ones place. And I'm ready to multiply. 1 times 8 is 8, and 1 times 6 is 6. And now I can add. 0 plus 0 is 0. 4 plus 8 is 12 tens. So I put a 2 here and I regroup. 10 tens equals 100. 600 plus 100. 600 plus 300 is 900. Plus one more 100 is 1000. Put a 0 here and I regroup. And I get 1020 as the product of 68 times 15. Hey, welcome back, squad. Happy Monday. We're going to go over points, lines, and segments, which is something new that we're learning for the first time that we didn't cover while we were still in school. Today, I'm going to show it sort of how it's done on the computer, and I'm going to stay in this box right here. And I'm going to also enter in some answers on our Google form so that we can practice that together. Then tomorrow, we'll learn something new when we're in class together. All right. So a point is used to describe an exact location. I always think about this when I read a map and I see like the "you are here" and it's like a red dot in a circle. It tells you exactly where you are. Points are usually labeled with a capital letter and like this dot. So when you write point A, you draw a point that looks like that, and then you write, A. And that's point A. When we have a path of points that go on forever, that's what we call a line. To show that a line like goes on forever and ever and ever, we use arrows pointing in both directions to show that it doesn't stop. So here's how I would write down a line if I was doing it. This line right here is called, you can call it line XY Or just like multiplication, where you can flip 3 times 2, the product is 6, and 2 times 3, the product is 6, you can do that same thing with lines and line segments. So we could call this line XY, or we could call it line YX. And I know it's a line because it has the arrows right there that are pointing on forever. So when I write line XY, I would first type XY, but then I would make sure that I have an arrow going on forever here to kind of show that this line goes on forever. And it has a line and arrows just like that. So when I write it out, it looks like line XY, or I could say line, so I have my arrows there, line, and I would do YX. Either way, I'm still writing out the same line. When we have a line segment is when we have a part of a line that stops and has 2 endpoints. Those points are those things up here, like point A. Here's some example of like line segments. For example, when you have a line that goes from here to here, you have line segment AB. And we use points, not arrows, to show where this line starts and stops. So when I write it out, I'm not going to have the arrows going on forever. I'm actually just going to draw a straight line and then type AB. Now I could also call this, because lines can go the reverse direction too, I could also call this line segment BA. So I could either call it line AB or line BA. For this one, this line that starts with D and goes all the way to G, even though it goes through other points, could be called line segment DG or line segment GD. So I would draw first a line, since it's a line segment, and then I would write DG. So that's line segment DG. And if I were to read it and write this one, and I wrote line segment GD, I could read it using my arrow as like kind of how I'm reading this. I could read it as line segment GD. So now we're going to do some examples looking at this chart here. First, I'm going to look at my point. When I draw point A, that's when I draw out the one point, like the dot of the exact location, and I make sure that I label it with a capital letter A. That is point A. Now if I move to line segment, remember line segments stop at 2 endpoints, so when I draw it out, I'm going to actually draw out 2 points here. So I'm going to have an endpoint right here. I'll make this a little bigger so I can drag it. An endpoint right here and an endpoint right here. They normally won't be this big. They'll be like this size. An endpoint right here and here. And I would draw a line connecting those endpoints, sort of like this. And then I would label each endpoint, endpoint A, and then endpoint B. And this is how you draw the line segment A, B. When I were drawing a line, remember a line goes on forever and ever. So when I draw a line, it's actually just going to look sort of like this. It's going to draw a line that sort of draws like this. And then it will actually go on forever. So you would have a line here, and then you would label the point C. And you would label the point, let me draw. We'll label the point D, just like this. Now you have line CD. When you're writing these out, sort of like in a word form, you would have, first you would have your lines for line segment AB, you would have your line, and then you would keep your line segment. You wouldn't have the arrows because the line segment stops. But for a line CD, you make sure you have those arrows showing that the line goes on forever. and then you have CD underneath. The arrows, again, show that a line goes on forever, like this. Voila. So if we were to enter this into our Google form, it's going to look a little different since we're not going to be able to draw out this table. So here's how it's going to look. When I enter in my Google form, I first have this picture right here. And this is point A. And so I'm going to say, how do you say this picture? Well, you can say it point A, line A, or line segment A. This is obviously point, since there's this point right here, A. Now I have this next picture with two arrows labeled X, Y. It's going to ask myself, how do you say this picture? Well, I have X, Y, and it's a line that goes on forever, which makes it just a line, not a line segment. So I would label this line YX. You could also label it line XY. You could do either one. And how would you write out this picture? Since it's a line that goes on forever, I need to use those arrows going forever. So I would make sure I find the line XY with the arrows going on forever, like option 3. Now I have this picture right here. It's a point, an endpoint with a line to another endpoint. The first endpoint's labeled A, the second endpoint's labeled B. Well, how do I say this picture? Well, it is a line segment since it has two endpoints, and the label is AB. So this is called line segment AB. And how I write that, it's not going to write it like a dot, and it doesn't go on forever, so I don't use my arrows. It's just a straight line on top with the AB label. Now, question number 6 asks me to identify point B on my number line. So it's going to ask me, where is point B here? Not on my number line, sorry, on my trapezoid. So I'm going to look for first my point that's labeled B. And here it is. There's a point and exact location labeled B. So now I just got to find that picture that matches that point. A, nope, that's point A. D, point D. B, here is point B right here. So I'm going to push that in for my Google form, and now I'm going to move on. Now this asks me to identify the line segment DE. So I want to first know that a line segment has two endpoints. I know since it's called line segment DE, one of my endpoints is D, and one of my endpoints is E. So I'm going to first find that endpoint D. Here it is, endpoint D, perfect. And now I want to find the line that goes all the way to endpoint E. Well, this is C, so it's not going to be here. This is B now. Oh, I have a line that goes right here to E, endpoint D, E. So I'm going to first see now which of my answer choices looks like this one I made right here. When I see that answer choice A, or option 1, looks exactly like that. It's a line with two endpoints, and that's DE, line segment DE. This option number 2 right here isn't a straight line. It actually has like multiple curves, which doesn't make any sense. And even these endpoints right here on the multiple curves has like an EC, which isn't the line segment I wanted in my question. The line segment I wanted in my question was line segment DE. Shoot your shot on your independent practice, identifying your points, lines, and segments.